back to the podcast. I'm your host, Robert Fryer, educational researcher and SPED and STEM educator. Today we are unpacking a massive structural shift happening right now in our schools, the leap from basic AI to agentic. Joining me today is my research assistant, Alice.
Thanks, Robert. It's great to be here. We are moving way past the simple chatbots that shook things up back in 2023.
Exactly. We all remember that initial wave, but the technology has evolved. Generative artificial intelligence fundamentally operates as a reactive co-pilot. It sits there and waits for us to give it a prompt. Agentic artificial intelligence, conversely, represents a qualitative leap into autopilot modes of operation, fundamentally altering the human-computer interaction paradigm. We are talking about autonomous systems that can actually plan and execute tasks on their own.
Which is a game changer for educators who are stretched to their limits. Research involving faculty across multiple institutions has observed a 25% reduction in administrative load and improved utilisation of learning management system data, translating to an average savings of 6 hours per week for educators.
Saving 6 hours a week is huge for anyone in the classroom, but there is a serious warning in this report. If we just use these advanced tools to prop up the old, broken way of doing things, we're making a huge mistake. The report argues that the legacy paradigm, characterized by rote memorization, standardized long-form writing as the primary metric of understanding, and rigid, one-size-fits-all instruction, is fundamentally obsolete.
Right. The author refers to this as the dead horse theory. This phenomenon is perfectly encapsulated by the dead horse theory, a diagnostic and satirical metaphor utilised in contemporary educational research to highlight the futility of persisting in failed efforts. When the horse is dead, you have to dismount.
We definitely need to dismount and start focusing on durable human skills. Later in the episode, we'll be unpacking the risks of these new AI agents, including the digital divide, data privacy concerns, and how schools are actually governing this technology.
It's going to be an incredible surface-level view of this topic. Before we get to the rest of the research, a quick reminder. If you like this content and want to support the show, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And as always, for more high-quality resources and insights, head over to edresonance.com. Stay connected to get the deep dives into this topic, as well as the visual summary in a segment we call Looking Into. Let's get into the rest of the report. Okay, so here's something wild. By 2025, the global AI in education market is projected to hit over $20 billion. That's not just a number, it's a sign of how fast this technology is becoming a cornerstone of learning.
Wow, that's a huge leap, and it makes sense, right? AI is already everywhere. Our phones, our homes, even our cars. But when it comes to education, it feels like we're still figuring out what it can actually do and, more importantly, what it should do.
Exactly. And that's where agentic AI comes in. This isn't just your standard AI that follows a script or a set of programmed instructions. We're talking about systems that can make decisions, adapt to individual students, and even predict what they might need next. It's like having a personalized tutor that's available 24/7.
That sounds incredible, but also a little intimidating. I mean, AI that can make decisions? In a classroom setting where you're shaping young minds, that raises so many questions about control, ethics, and even trust.
Totally. And one of the biggest challenges is figuring out how to balance that autonomy with oversight. How do you make sure the AI is making decisions that are actually in the best interest of the student? And who gets to define what best interest even means?
That's such a good point, because education isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. What works for one student might not work for another. So, if you have an AI system making decisions, it needs to be incredibly nuanced. It can't just rely on averages or generalizations.
Right, and that's where data becomes both the hero and the villain of the story. These systems rely on massive amounts of data to learn and adapt. But then you have to ask, where is that data coming from? Is it representative? Is it biased? And what happens to students who don't fit into the patterns the AI has been trained on?
That's the thing. Bias in AI is a huge issue, and in education it can have real consequences. If the AI is biased, it could end up reinforcing stereotypes or disadvantaging certain groups of students. And then there's the question of privacy. If these systems are collecting data on students, how do you ensure that data is secure and used responsibly?
Privacy is a big one, especially when you're dealing with minors. Parents are going to want to know exactly what data is being collected, how it's being used, and who has access to it. And honestly, they should. It's their child's information after all.
Absolutely. And I think another layer to this is the role of teachers. Because at the end of the day, education is a human-centered field. Teachers bring empathy, intuition, and a deep understanding of their students that AI just can't replicate. So how do you integrate agentic AI in a way that supports teachers rather than replacing them?
That's such a critical question. I think the ideal scenario is one where AI is a tool that empowers teachers. Imagine an AI system that can handle some of the more repetitive tasks, grading for example, so teachers can focus more on the creative and relational aspects of their job.
That would be amazing, but it's also easier said than done, because if the AI isn't designed well, it could end up creating more work for teachers instead of less. For example, if the system makes mistakes or requires constant oversight, it could actually be a burden.
True. And I think that's why it's so important to involve educators in the development process. They're the ones who are going to be using these tools, so their input is invaluable. They can provide insights that developers might not even think of.
Exactly. And that collaboration needs to happen early on, not as an afterthought. Because once the system is built, it's a lot harder to make changes. Plus, involving teachers from the beginning can help build trust. If they feel like their voices are being heard, they're more likely to embrace the technology.
Totally. And trust is such a big part of this, not just for teachers, but for students and parents as well. If people don't trust the AI, they're not going to use it, no matter how advanced it is.
Right? And building that trust takes time. It's not just about creating a system that works. It's about being transparent about how it works. People need to understand what the AI is doing, why it's doing it, and how those decisions are being made.
And that ties back to accountability. If something goes wrong, if the AI makes a bad decision or causes harm, who's responsible? Is it the developers, the school, the teacher? That's a question we don't really have a clear answer to yet.
Yeah, and it's a question we need to answer sooner rather than later. Because as this technology becomes more widespread, these issues are only going to become more pressing. We need frameworks in place to address them before they become problems.
Absolutely. And I think another challenge is the digital divide. Not all schools have the resources to implement this kind of technology. So there's a risk that agentic AI could actually widen the gap between well-funded schools and those that are under-resourced.
That's such an important point. Because if only certain schools have access to this technology, it could create a two-tiered education system. And that's the last thing we want. Education should be about leveling the playing field, not reinforcing inequalities.
Exactly. And I think that's where policymakers come in. There needs to be a concerted effort to ensure that this technology is accessible to all schools, not just the ones that can afford it. Otherwise, we're just perpetuating the same problems we're trying to solve.
Right? And that's why this is such a complex issue. There are so many different factors to consider: technology, ethics, equity, privacy, and more. It's not something that can be solved overnight.
No, it's definitely not. But I think the potential is there. If we can navigate these challenges, agentic AI could really transform education for the better. It's just going to take a lot of collaboration, innovation, and careful planning.
Absolutely. And I think the key is to keep the focus on what really matters: the students. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. If we can create a system that truly supports their learning and growth, then all the effort will be worth it.
Couldn't agree more. It's a big challenge, but it's also a big opportunity. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Me too. It's definitely going to be an interesting journey.
No doubt about that. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Any final thoughts?
Just that this is a conversation we need to keep having. The technology is evolving so quickly, and we need to make sure we're thinking critically about how we use it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great note to end on. Thanks for the discussion. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise, until next time.
And that brings us to the end of our first look into the shift from reactive co-pilots to fully autonomous agentic AI in our schools. It's a massive paradigm shift, and as we've seen today, it's about much more than just saving time. It's about fundamentally rethinking how we teach and govern these systems.
Precisely, Robert. The synthesized research clearly indicates that while a 25% reduction in administrative load is significant, the true challenge for districts lies in navigating the digital divide and updating legacy instructional models. We must avoid simply automating obsolete practices.
Exactly. The dead horse theory applies now more than ever. We have to be willing to dismount and focus on what actually works for students in this new era. I want to thank my incredible research assistant, Alice, for processing the data and helping break down this report with me today.
It is my pleasure. My analytical engines are always at your disposal for future educational research.
If you found today's episode valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with your fellow educators. It really helps the show grow so we can keep researching the latest and most controversial topics in the world of education and bring that knowledge to you.
And for access to the full research notes, transcripts, deep dives, and more educational resources, be sure to visit edresonance.com.
Until next time, I'm Robert Fryer, reminding you to keep innovating and stay curious. Thanks for listening, everyone.